This is the steroid that built some of the most freakish physiques in bodybuilding history, then destroyed the men who used it. It's called Dianabol, D-ball. Engineered for one thing, pure, fast, brutal muscle gain. Forget slow progress. This was about instant size. Protein synthesis goes into overdrive. Muscles balloon. Strength skyrockets. In the Cold War era, Soviet and East German lifters used it to dominate, and its influence bled into bodybuilding. It created legends and left a trail of broken bodies. By the 1990s, Dianabol was banned, but the damage was done. It taught a generation to chase chemical shortcuts. EPO. Cyclists made it infamous, but bodybuilders discovered a different edge. Erythropoietin, or EPO, supercharges red blood cell production, pumping more oxygen through your veins like rocket fuel. More oxygen means more stamina, more reps, more time under tension before fatigue shuts you down. And here's the secret, bodybuilding isn't just about building mass. It's about surviving the sheer torture of prep. 2-hour leg days followed by endless cardio, all while eating almost nothing. For a mass monster, the enemy isn't just weight, it's exhaustion. EPO changes that equation. Suddenly the wall comes later, or not at all. But the story doesn't end with endurance. More oxygen in the bloodstream also means a leaner, crisper look. Muscles stay full, while fat melts under high-intensity cardio. On stage, that translates to a physique that looks both massive and razor-sharp, exactly the edge competitors were chasing. The problem? Detecting it was almost impossible in the early years. For a while, EPO became the underground cheat code of bodybuilding. Rumors swirled that some pros were quietly microdosing it in the off-season to survive high-volume training, then pushing it harder during contest prep to burn fat without looking flat. When labs finally caught up, the fallout was brutal. Positives rolled in across multiple sports, and bodybuilding's dirty secret started leaking into the headlines. The so-called blood booster wasn't just for marathoners. It had slipped into gyms and onto stages, part of the never-ending arms race to train longer, recover faster, and look harder than ever before. HGH. If Dianabol is size and EPO is endurance, human growth hormone HGH is recovery. This isn't just a muscle builder. It's a system-wide upgrade. Where steroids focus on fibers, HGH reaches deeper, rebuilding cartilage, thickening tendons, reinforcing ligaments, even improving skin elasticity. It's the body's ultimate repair crew on fast forward. That's why in the 2000s mass monster era, HGH became legendary. You'd hear whispers in gyms that the freakiest physiques, the ones carrying 280 pounds of stage weight, weren't possible without it. And then came the infamous side effect that fans started spotting on stage, the GH gut. Distended abdomens that looked out of place on otherwise shredded physiques. Critics called it the price of chasing size beyond human limits. But to the athletes, the trade-off was worth it. With HGH, you weren't just training harder, you were training non-stop. 2-a-day lifting sessions, hours of cardio, back-to-back brutal sets. Where a natural athlete would crumble, HGH turned recovery into a weapon. It meant your competition needed a week to bounce back from a heavy squat day, but you were already back under the bar the next morning. And it wasn't just the muscle. HGH had a unique synergy in bodybuilding when stacked with insulin and IGF-1. Together, they created an anabolic environment so extreme it blurred the line between human and experiment. The result? Bodies that didn't just look powerful, they looked alien. Granite hard, veiny, and freakishly dense. The controversy came when labs finally caught up. Leaked protocols, seized shipments, whispers from insiders all pointed to HGH being at the heart of the sport's evolution. But unlike steroids, which pack on quick size, HGH was about longevity and battle. It kept pros on the stage year after year, training like machines and coming back bigger every season. It was the secret recovery weapon of a generation. A drug that didn't just build muscle, it rebuilt athletes into something their bodies were never meant to be. THG. What if you wanted the perfect drug? Not the biggest, not the fastest, just the safest. A compound no lab in the world could detect. That's exactly what THG, better known as the clear, was created to be. This wasn't some accidental discovery. It was a carefully engineered designer steroid, cooked up in the shadows of underground labs with one mission: beat the test. Bodybuilders whispered about it in locker rooms like it was a ghost. Everyone knew someone who had it, but no one ever got caught with it. For years, it became the holy grail of chemical enhancement. On the surface, it gave the usual steroid benefits: lean mass, insane strength, faster recovery. But the real magic wasn't in the results. It was in the invisibility cloak. Anti-doping agencies could test, retest, analyze samples for weeks, and still find nothing. For athletes willing to pay top dollar, this was the ultimate cheat code. All of the reward, none of the risk. But here's the thing about ghosts. They always leave traces. The empire of secrecy collapsed not because of a failed test, but because of human nature. Jealous rivals, bitter ex-coaches, and anonymous whistleblowers. One day, a syringe filled with THG landed in the hands of anti-doping authorities. And with that single piece of evidence, the myth shattered. The perfect drug wasn't perfect anymore. When labs finally reverse-engineered it, the fallout was immediate. Scandals ripped through multiple sports, from track to football. And yes, bodybuilding circles weren't untouched. It proved a brutal truth. No matter how advanced the chemistry, the testers eventually catch up. The arms race never ends, it just shifts. For bodybuilders, THG was a reminder of the sport's darkest reality. In the pursuit of perfection, science will always find a way to cheat, and science will always find a way to catch you. The only question is when. Nandrolone. Known on the streets as Decadurabolin, Nandrolone wasn't the flashiest steroid. It didn't blow you up overnight like Dianabol, or carve you into a granite statue like Winstrol. Instead, it became the workhorse of bodybuilding cycles, the slow, steady builder. What made it different? Recovery. Not just muscular recovery, but joint relief. Heavy squats, brutal deadlifts, endless pressing, movements that grind cartilage and inflame tendons. Nandrolone dulled that pain. It lubricated the joints, soothed the elbows and knees, and let athletes push loads that would cripple a natural lifter. Some bodybuilders even called it liquid orthopedics in a vial. And because it builds gradually, the results look clean. No sudden bloating, no suspicious overnight size, just steady slabs of muscle, layered month after month. For powerlifters and mass monsters alike, it became the quiet backbone of long cycles. But then came the twist, the gray area. The human body actually produces tiny traces of nandrolone naturally. That made it one of the most controversial drugs in anti-doping history. Countless athletes popped positive, swearing it was a fluke of nature or the result of contaminated supplements. Some even claimed eating certain foods like wild boar or offal triggered false positives. One of the most famous cases, British sprinter Linford Christie, tested positive for nandrolone in 1999, claiming innocence, sparking a worldwide debate. The bodybuilding world saw it as confirmation that the DECA loophole was real. Maybe, just maybe, you could test dirty and still argue your way out. But here's the truth. Few believed it. The amounts showing up in tests were usually far beyond what a body could produce naturally. Still, the myth lived on, turning nandrolone into a drug wrapped not only in muscle-building power, but in controversy. For bodybuilders, it became both a blessing and a curse. The joint healing properties made it irresistible, but the testing drama made it dangerous. And yet, even today, DECA remains one of the most beloved and abused steroids in bodybuilding history. Clenbuterol. Clenbuterol isn't even a steroid. It started life as an asthma medication designed to open airways and ease breathing. But in the world of bodybuilding, it morphed into something far more notorious. A fat-burning furnace in a pill. Unlike traditional stimulants that just give you energy, Clen actually reprograms your metabolism. It raises your core temperature, increases your heart rate, and puts your body into a constant state of fight or flight. The result? Fat melts off at a staggering pace, while your hard-earned muscle stays protected. That's why, in contest prep circles, Clenbuterol became legendary. It's the secret sauce behind the paper-thin skin look, the dry, grainy, vascular appearance judges love on stage. Competitors who had been dieting for months would add Clen in the final stretch to cross the finish line shredded. Some even combined it with thyroid hormones for a 1-2 punch of fat loss so aggressive it bordered on chemical warfare. But there's always a cost. Clenbuterol's side effects are infamous. Violent tremors, racing heartbeat, insomnia, and panic attack-like jitters. Push the dosage too far, and you're flirting with cardiac hypertrophy and arrhythmias that can end a career or a life. More than one competitor has collapsed from heart problems linked to reckless cleanse cycles. Despite the dangers, it earned the nickname the cutting drug of champions because it worked fast. In the underground bodybuilding world, it was treated as the final polishing tool. The drug that separated the merely lean from the freakishly shredded. Even today, long after its ban, Clenbuterol still casts a long shadow over the sport, a reminder that the path to perfection often runs straight through risk. Peptides. Why inject synthetic HGH when you can convince your own body to flood itself with growth hormone? That's the genius and the danger behind peptides. Compounds like GHRP6, GHRP2, and ipamorelin act like chemical messengers, marching straight to the pituitary gland and shouting, "Open the floodgates." Unlike straight HGH injections, which stay in your system long enough for labs to hunt down, peptides create short, powerful spikes of natural growth hormone. In and out so fast that early anti-doping tests barely stood a chance. For bodybuilders, it was the perfect stealth weapon. The benefits were nearly identical to HGH, faster recovery, denser muscle, tougher joints, but with a slimmer chance of being caught. And they weren't just about recovery. Peptides became popular in the recomp phase, when athletes wanted to burn fat while preserving muscle. Certain peptides like CJC1295 stacked with GHRPs created a cocktail that not only mimicked HGH but amplified it. Add insulin into the mix, and you had a chemical environment for growth that bordered on science fiction. But no drug in bodybuilding comes without a price. With peptides, it was hunger, insane, uncontrollable hunger. GHRP6 in particular turned competitors into midnight raiders, inhaling entire pizzas, boxes of cereal, or tubs of ice cream without even realizing it. In prep, that kind of appetite was both a blessing and a curse. It built mass in the offseason, but for shredded contest shape, it could derail months of discipline in one binge. Testosterone. Every anabolic steroid in existence is just a variation of one thing: testosterone. It's the original, the master key. The hormone your body already produces in small amounts is the same hormone that drives muscle growth, bone density, aggression, recovery. Basically everything a bodybuilder craves in extreme quantities. In its natural form, testosterone turns teenagers into men, but in its pharmaceutical form, it turns lifters into monsters. That's why it's the foundation of almost every cycle, whether it's stacked with orals, peptides, or designer steroids. No matter what else an athlete takes, testosterone is the bedrock. But here's the catch: because it's the blueprint, labs know exactly how to look for it. Anti-doping agencies measure the ratio of testosterone to epitestosterone, your TE ratio. Go too high and the red flag goes up immediately. That's why microdosing became an art form, sneaking in tiny amounts, boosting strength and recovery without tipping the numbers. It was the chemical equivalent of tightrope walking. And the excuses? Legendary. One sprinter claimed his positive test was from too much beer and too much sex the night before. In bodybuilding, stories of tainted supplements or naturally high levels became almost cliché. The truth was simpler. Everyone was using it. Everyone thought they could beat the test. And some actually did for a while. What made testosterone even more dangerous in bodybuilding wasn't the risk of getting caught. It was the sheer dependence. Once you flood your system with synthetic T, your natural production shuts down. That means when you stop, your hormones crash. Your body stops functioning normally, and you feel like a shadow of yourself. For many athletes, cycling off wasn't even an option anymore. They were locked into lifelong use. And yet testosterone remained the backbone of the sport. No drug carried as much history, as much power, or as much inevitability. Whether it was microdosed, stacked, or blasted in reckless amounts, testosterone wasn't just the blueprint, it was the identity of modern bodybuilding. Diuretics? In bodybuilding, muscle means nothing if you can't make weight or hide your stack. That's where diuretics come in. The most deceptive, and sometimes the most deadly tool in the entire chemical arsenal. On paper, they're just medications to treat high blood pressure or fluid retention. But in the shadows of contest prep, they became the disguised drug. Diuretics flush water out of the body at lightning speed, diluting everything in your system: steroids, stimulants, masking agents themselves, and making a urine sample look clean. Anti-doping labs hate them because their very presence is a red flag. You're not just using something banned, you're trying to cover your tracks. But diuretics weren't just about cheating the test. They became the final touch before stepping on stage. Hours before prejudging, competitors pop a dose and watch their physiques transform. The skin tightens, muscles pop like they're vacuum sealed, and veins snake across shredded limbs. It's the difference between looking in shape and looking otherworldly. The price, however, is brutal. Push the dosage too far and you don't just lose water. You drain your electrolytes, crash your blood pressure, and put your heart in immediate danger. That's why some of bodybuilding's darkest tragedies are linked to these little pills. In the hours before a show, the wrong dose can mean death on the hotel bathroom floor. It's the unspoken nightmare of every competitor who rolls the dice on game day. Diuretics perfectly embody bodybuilding's obsession with control. They're the ultimate paradox, the tool that can create the most jaw-dropping stage look, or end a career, even a life, in a heartbeat. The razor's edge of prep is real, and diuretics are the sharpest blade in the box. IGF-1. If HGH is recovery, IGF-1 is evolution. It doesn't just inflate fibers, it can promote hyperplasia, new muscle cells. Stacked with HGH, the synergy looks unstoppable and stays hard to police because IGF-1 naturally exists in the body. Labs are still trying to separate what's natural from what's not. Amphetamines and stimulants. Not for size, for survival. Amphetamines, ephedrine, Captagon, and friends sharpen focus, kill appetite, and numb fatigue through hell phase prep. They also push athletes toward heart dangers, anxiety, and addiction. The line between dialed in and wired to break is frighteningly thin. Cannabis. The strangest banned substance of them all, cannabis. It doesn't build muscle or burn fat. Officially, it's banned for health risk and spirit of sport. In bodybuilding, some say it lingered on the list because it's a convenient narrative shift. Test positive for steroids and you're a cheater. Test positive for weed and you're a rebel, or a victim of an outdated rule. The story changes, even if the lab result doesn't. From Cold War chemistry to modern designer labs, bodybuilding has lived a relentless arms race. Chemistry versus ethics, survival versus sanity. And the truth? That battle isn't over. The stage lights keep getting brighter. The methods keep getting smarter. The human body keeps being asked to do the impossible. And chemistry keeps trying to say yes.